What is up, New World? Welcome back. My name is Omni, and if you're watching this video, that probably means you've chosen to level life staff, or you're at least entertaining the possibility. I'm not sure why you hate yourself enough to do that, but I'm always here for you if you need someone to talk to. In all seriousness, the life staff really does hold its own, even as a standalone weapon. It's just not for the impatient. In this video, we'll be going over some life staff abilities as well as some of the builds that I find best for PvE, PvP, and specifically solo leveling of the staff. But before we start, I want to remind everyone that at every major sub goal, we are doing donations to local animal shelters. We donated $200 to Four Paws at 500 subs, and we'll be doing another donation at 1,000 subs. So, if you like furry things, then make sure you drop a like, comment, and of course a sub. Alright? Let's get into it. Links to all these builds will be placed in the video description below for your future reference. The first build we'll talk about is our solo or DPS build. I use the term DPS lightly because there really isn't a fast way to do this compared to most weapons, but you do have a high amount of sustain and can pretty much go from one fight to the next with zero downtime if you don't get carried away. Your main goal here is to create enough damage in order to avoid a weapon swap to maximize the gained weapon XP. We start with Absolve to circumvent any early mana issues. This ability is a no-brainer in all of our builds since just about everything requires using light or heavy attacks. Next, we move to Orb of Protection for the early additional damage, and as a bonus, we get the Fortify as well as a tiny heal on top of that. After that, we take Beacon for even more damage and sustain, but if you're having trouble taking damage, you can certainly take Sacred Ground first and then Beacon. Beacon gives us another damage spell, which is incredibly handy because it sticks to whatever you throw at it and it pulses healing in the area around the target for 10 seconds. After Beacon, we take Blessed Touch. This allows our light attacks to create a small radius around the target of healing for 20% weapon damage. I know the tooltip says passing through an ally, but currently this creates an AoE around whatever you hit as well. This comes in handy because it heals you when you're in proximity to what you are attacking. These abilities in combination with Sacred Ground at your feet allow you to face tank quite a few things in the game that other classes cannot. Next up, we will take Revitalize in order to reduce the cooldown for both Beacon and Orb of Protection. That is pretty much it for anything that can give you any extra damage beyond just increasing your weapon damage itself or your focus stat. From here on out, we're just placing points in order with the idea of maximizing sustain, mobility, and survivability. Holy Ground comes next for mana regen since you'll be sitting in Sacred Ground for the rest of your life, and then Blessed to make the heals coming from Beacon, Orb, and Sacred significantly more effective. We follow this with Protector's Blessing, which adds a small heal to our Orb of Protection, and you just have to be on top of the target when it lands, just like the Fortify benefit. After this, we get Protector's Touch, which gives us another Fortify from landing light or heavy attacks, which also increases our Fortify to a 25% damage reduction. We then take Bend Light, which allows us to get a pretty huge bonus from our dodge to healing. The idea here being that if we get into trouble, or things got out of hand, we can dodge back, place Sacred Ground, and have that healing increase by 20% as well as beacons. And we take an improvement to Beacon with Infused Light, and we follow that up with Radiance's Blessing. Now we have increased the area of Beacon's effect as well as extended its duration. By the time you reach this point in your tree, you're probably not taking damage quite as well as you had before, and for that reason we jump back into the healing tree and take Enchanted Justice. This ability is only marginally useful because of its long cooldown, but it's a free heal over time every 2 minutes while you're solo grinding. It's not going to make or break a battle, but it'll certainly help with your ability to sustain momentum in longer sessions. We jump back into the protection tree to finish out Beacon's improvements, and then gain a 20% haste every time Beacon heals us for 3 seconds. This may not seem like a lot, but considering we will have Beacon up constantly due to Revitalize, you can essentially count on a constant 20% haste. To extend that haste, as well as all of our Fortify buffs, we take Glowing Focus. This makes all of our buffs last 20% longer, and that includes Enchanted Justice as well. Now we take Balance, which is an additional haste of 10% if we go below 50% health. This may not seem like a lot, but again, it's improved by glowing focus, and if we're that low, something has probably gone wrong, and that 10% haste stacks with our haste from Beacon, giving us basically 30% movement speed for up to 5 seconds. The last two abilities I generally take will be Sacred Protection for the persistent 5% healing buff, and then Protector's Strength after that, because having Sacred Protection essentially guarantees a 15% healing buff when used with Protector's Strength. The rotation with this build changes as the abilities progress, but the most important parts of using this build is going to be landing Orb of Protection as well as Beacon. Pull with a heavy attack and be sure you hold these two abilities until you know you're going to hit, since they are a large portion of your DPS. Something like a heavy attack, then a light attack, then maybe Sacred Ground followed by another light, followed immediately by Beacon since that's the one with the longer cooldown. Slip in another light attack, and then immediately after that we follow with Orb. You'll notice that if you use Orb directly after an attack or any other ability, it seems to cancel the global cooldown, so to maximize your DPS you want to use both Beacon and Orb right after a different ability as opposed to before. Here's an example of that in slow motion. As you get higher level, you'll want to make good use of Bend Light and Intensify, so you would shift your rotation to incorporate a dodge before laying down Sacred Ground and or casting Beacon, as well as trying to squeeze in another heavy attack prior to those as well for the extra healing. Next is what I will refer to as a PVX build. This sacrifices Orb and additional damage for more healing, allowing you to heal groups through expeditions, but where this build really shines is in group and large-scale PvP. It is not quite as effective in expeditions as it is in wars and invasions, but if you don't want to be paying Azoths to switch back and forth, this can certainly do both things. This build focuses on maximizing abilities that have the capability to heal allies, not just group members. It's easy to miss that term in the skill descriptions as the light tree staff wording is a little deceptive, but suffice it to say, when you see the healing charts for your war or invasion with this build, you're going to understand why paying close attention to that word ally is important. First, we grab Absolved and Sacred Ground, followed by Bend Light, which will allow us access to Beacon, which really is the bread and butter of this build. Beacon attaches to its target and pulses 20% weapon damage as healing every second over 10 seconds before improvements. If you think about it, that's a 200% weapon damage heal over time. Not only does it heal group members, but again, it heals all allies within its area of effect. After this, we take Light's Embrace, which will serve as our single target heal in this build and is highly effective when coupled with buffs, as you can see, since it gets a 10% bonus to healing from each buff on the target on top of all of the other healing bonuses we are about to get. From this point, we improve Sacred Ground after taking it so that our tanks get a stamina buff and also a 50% healing buff from it. The added mana regen is nice, but you'll find that it's pretty situational since most of the time Sacred Ground is going to be outside of the area you're in, unless you're wearing heavy armor, of course. From there, it's just taking whatever is the most efficient way to bonus healing while working our way out towards maximizing ally-specific abilities. We take Intensify for the easy 30% first, and then a Sacred Protection for a 5% overall healing increase. That also adds a 15% increase on Light's Embrace since it does count as a buff on all of your group members. We take Blissful Touch for an extra bit of healing because you're going to be spamming light attacks almost constantly, and then we get Revitalize, mostly to cool down Sacred Ground and Beacon. Since we know we're not taking Orb to fully pump Light's Embrace, it's a tough choice on where to go from here, but we know we're not going to get the biggest benefit from our ally heal enhancing abilities without having maximized Beacon first. So, we set up our dive into Beacon. If you don't have all 19 points and you're still leveling as well as running expeditions, I would probably deviate from this order and go through the healing tree first. Since we know we'll always have Sacred Protection, we now take Protector's Strength for 10% healing. Then we go straight down the Beacon abilities, and by doing this we've ensured a massive healing area around our target with Infused Light. We increase the duration of Beacon by 5 seconds, and as well as giving that entire area haste with Speed of Light. There are some crucial things to understand about this ability. With its area increased, you are applying both haste and with your buffs to healing potentially a 280 to 310% weapon damage heal to literally everyone that's not red standing in the area for 15 seconds. The duration is important because now that it's been extended, we can cast it again before it even wears off since we are revitalizing that cooldown with our light attacks. That chain of actions is what makes this build amazing. The haste even improves Light's Embrace because it counts as a buff. We now switch back to the healing tree and take Desperate Speed. Again, we look at the language in this ability and it's another ally specific ability. This means that if you're putting Beacon on a point and anyone in your raid is below 50%, you will refresh your cooldowns by 10% every 5 seconds on top of Revitalize. This is a massive help with Sacred Ground and Beacon. Considering the reach of Beacon and Sacred Ground, this can be used to churn out massive amounts of healing in wars. After this, we take Enchanted Justice. I know you're thinking it's kind of a waste, but it comes down to this versus Mending Touch in order to get the final healing tree ability, and Mending Touch just really isn't that functional currently. Then, we take the ultimate ability, Divine Blessing, which again, you'll notice the word ally in it. When we have allies below 50%, we're increasing our healing by another 30%. Some quick math, and if the stars align, you have all your buffs up, someone is standing in Sacred Ground and they're below 50%, you have the potential bonus healing on them of up to 145% for Sacred Ground at Beacon, and up to 175% from Light's Embrace. That's complete f***ing insanity. Finally, we take Glowing Focus to ensure our haste from Beacon is maximized. Maximizing the healing from this build can be challenging, mostly because you have to juggle Intensify while trying to Revitalize at the same time, so efficient use of Beacon and Sacred Ground is key, since our Light's Embrace is healing for somewhere between 10 to 20% less than an Orb build would be healing for. Your rotation should generally be a mix of heavy attacks to refresh and intensify, and then mixing light attacks between those and your abilities to revitalize your cooldowns. If you're doing this correctly, Beacon will stay active until well after the cooldown refreshes, and Sacred Ground will be available just seconds after casting it. You do have to be careful though, refreshing your cooldowns this fast can deplete your mana pretty quickly if you're throwing spells around too much. Thankfully, both Sacred Ground and Beacon are incredibly efficient mana-wise, so you shouldn't have too many issues unless it's hitting the fan. Now that we're through the builds, let's just go over some general tips before we shut the video down. I should point out that all of these builds assume you're actually maining the Life Staff at the time and are focused on using it almost exclusively. I will be making a second video for alternate builds in which we'll go over Life Staff complement builds, as well as supplemental weapon builds for a Life Staff main. It was just too much to fit into one video. Probably one of the most important things to remember is that splitting weapon damage on a mob also splits the EXP. If you want to get this over with quickly, well, I guess there really is no quickly with the Life Staff, but as fast as possible anyway, you want to stick to it as much as you can. Or alternatively, you can just level it faster with a regular weapon, and then come back to level the Life Staff at 60, but without AoE damage abilities, this is going to be a pretty big snorefest. When selecting a supplemental weapon as a Life Staff main, you really have to think carefully. Copy-pasting another build from a weapon that's meant to complement like a rapier or an ice gauntlet, for example, won't work well with the Life Staff, so you have to choose wisely. Whatever your choice, you'll want to take advantage of using Amber Gems to get the damage bonus from your focus stat. Some popular choices are Hatchet for the additional survivability with Berserk, Spear for the knockdowns, and Ice Gauntlet for the crowd control. As far as your stats go, you really generate so much healing in a static area, you're not going to need Constitution until you're 60. Any points put into an attribute other than Focus just decreases your DPS over time, which slows your leveling process unless you're running lots and lots of expeditions. My approach to get a little bit of Constitution while leveling was to get the faction gear at each tier, and then use the transmute tokens to create of the cleric gear. This seemed to work out just fine, and eventually got me to 50 Constitution. I'll also say that just because the process can be slow, it's best to do your leveling in light armor for the damage bonus. The danger is minimal considering you can face tank even in light armor most things anywhere near your level, so save the heavy armor for 60. As you're grinding this out, just keep in mind, There really is no fast way to do this, and the key is avoiding downtime as opposed to just killing things quickly. Overextending your fights that are too difficult or having too many enemies just delays your progress even further. Most importantly, just relax, have a good time. This is a game after all, right? Well, that does it for the video. I hope it's been of help, and if you've made it this far, don't forget to like, comment, and sub. Also, if you're looking for a guild in New World, we are currently recruiting on Brazier. Our guild name is Grapes Together Strong, and you'll find a link to our guild Discord in the description below. Well, that's it. Till next time.